Does anyone have a red flag anywhere? A red flag or even red undies?
I never leave home without it.
Well, actually, that's good. No, I understand that because I was going to wave it in front of you.
Do you want me to sing the
I was actually going to wave it in front of Jan, as a matter of fact. A recent survey of Australian workers has come up with some really interesting results, with close to a third of people polled claiming that unions were a thing of the past. You listening, Jan? The poll conducted by Morgan & Banks revealed that 39% of workers would rather negotiate an individual contract with their employer than belong to a trade union. Add to this the fact that union membership across the board has declined by a third over the past decade, and that membership in the private sector currently sits at a mere 23%. And you'd have to say that the unions are in pretty bad shape. In fact, a lot of people say it's all over Red Rover for the unions. Jan, what do you think about it?
It was all over for Jeff Kennett when he tried to make it go that way. In the end, the unions and the employers just begged for a sort of reconciliation between workers and employers, and now they've just discarded that whole system.
Why is it that right across the board, back in the 60s we had 67%,
and the men in balaclavas and the night sticks belting the bejesus out of the workers?
67% back in the 60s belonged to unions. Today it's well under 25%.
I know, it's an employer's situation. As I've pointed out, back in the 1960s, the corporations had to pay 60% to what we collected 60% of our government revenue from the corporate sector. Today we collect less than 24% from the corporate sector. This is put on. The whole thing is put on, and you know, I come across as a screaming radical. It's just good common sense. If you've got happy workers in a mixed economy, you've got a good situation. But I honestly don't think there's that much need for the strong trade unions now, because we have state and federal legislation to protect civil liberties.
You don't think that we need to have the unions anymore? No, I don't think we have
the strong... When my dad was working on the waterfront, they didn't have toilets, they didn't have holiday pay, they didn't have...
Well, when they worked on the waterfront, they used to have a pee in the bloody harbour.
Do you think that was a good situation? And the bosses never give unless it's taken from them.
You really are a real commie, aren't you?
They never volunteer.
I mean, you really are one of the world's greatest socialists.
Where the big deal was where the dad got
love it.
The equivalent of $12 an hour. You just talked about throwing $1,000 at a poker bloody machine. And people out there today are talking about whether they're getting $20 an hour or $23 an hour for their work. Can you imagine that?
How much do you get paid an hour to do this show, Jan?
But did you agree?
Jan, how much do you get paid?
I'm bloody well overpaid.
Can you give us an indication of by how much you're overpaid?
As long as you tell us you're paid
to
do this program.
I'm not overpaid.
What I was going to say, Stan, is 45% of Australians now are little shareholders. It's the embourgeoisement of the working class. There's no longer a definable working class out there.
No.
The embourgeoisment of the working class.
No idea, Jan. Carlotta.
Jan, what year are you talking about? I remember when I grew up, my stepfather worked at Unilevers, right? And I had uncles work at a place called Pool and Steels in Balmain, which was very industrial in those days. And I couldn't believe it. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd all be in the pub. They'd all be in the pub. No, excuse me. And then if it rained,
and where would the bloody boss be?
If it rained, they got rain money. They'd come home early. I remember them coming home with a square loaves of bread and one day. Now, when I went to join a union, when I left school and I got into the entertainment business, they wouldn't even let me sign up because they thought I was a bastardised act. And I've never forgiven them. I've never liked unions. I don't like them. They can blow it out their bum. And I think we're better off without them.
They made me go on strike as a young journalist.
That's why we're getting a reputation in this country as being lazy workers.
Back in the 70s,
because we want everything for nothing and we don't want to get off our arse and work for it.
Delegate for the models and mannequins union.
Why am I not amazed about that?
Because we didn't get paid. It would be 6 months.
What was it again? What union was it again? The shop, what?
Models and mannequins union.
Models and mannequins.
I was this delegate.
How fabulous.
Oh, that does it for me. That does it for me. Oh, dear.
I think somehow they've lost their voice now.
I
don't think they exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I was seriously, as an 18-year-old cadet, you know, we had a big stop work meeting, and it was when they were going over, you know, computerising the media industry, and they said, you know, you must go on strike, and I've never really forgiven them since. But there is a place for them in terms of people like who work in the rag trade, and some of those people like the Speedo workers were a classic example, who are being, you know, really exploited, and then down the street someone's getting paid $2.75 an hour to make Speedos when these guys are all getting the sack. So there is a place for unions, but it's good. I mean, their power has been greatly diminished, which is great.
Where do you draw the line with them? That's what happens.
I think when they're looking after disadvantaged...
all the builders walk off buildings and then they don't work for a month.
Let's just hear from Lisa.
I know you see this as an enormous victory as a right-wing radical, as you are, Stan, but I think this is actually a really good sign. It means that the unions have done their job over the decades. And the reason people don't need them
It's great to be able to put a different spin on it. How can you put a spin on it like that?
It's a good sign, Stan.
No, okay,
things have come so far, for women in particular.
The unions
like equal
are not
pay and
wanted
maternity
anymore.
leave.
The reason why unions are not wanted anymore is because they don't do the job. I can remember back with the AJA, as a matter of fact, back in the late 70s. You know, I was a member of the AJA. I find them the most incompetent bunch of nincompoops I've ever...
They're not true unions, they're guilds. We're talking
about working. But they are a union. They are a union and they just didn't represent me. So I told them to go and get stuff.
Do you think we'd have any of those things if we didn't have unions?
We wouldn't have you, Jen. I beg your pardon, Jen?
Oh, you heard.
It's always a very good way to finish off an argument, I
Who's next? Fiona.
Oh, look, I'm, to be honest, not educated enough in this whole situation. I've never been a member of a union, unless I was when I was in my band. I don't remember, to be honest. The union's never done anything directly for me.
What was the band you're in?
A band called Deaf Effects. We were together for 7 years, and we were in America, and I think we had to join a union to be allowed to go and perform in America or something. It was something to do with that.
Deaf Effects.
But I do, Deaf Effects, DEFFX. I still sing,
do you?
But yeah.
Sing us a few songs now.
I am woman, hear me roar, numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and...
Hang on.
That's very good. That's very good. Okay, all right. Why don't well, Gretel, you haven't said a word yet.
No.
No. Well, are you going to?
The subject, Reed.
Can you sing?
Yes.
Well,
that was me just then.
Is that right?
She had a hand up my back.
Yeah. I'd like to have the hand up the front, as a matter of fact. But anyway, that's another story. We're going to come back and talk about another rock and roller, Marilyn Manson.